don't know if it is or not. No, it's on.
So I'll
Yeah.
call you back. Okay, thank you so much. You too.
We had some agendas and notebooks with attachments to it and everything for you all, but the person bringing it is missing. So trying to find them.
They said that they'd have iPads here. Weren't they supposed to have iPads? I
I have it
have,
on my phone.
I have what was in the mail out. It's just a standard agenda.
Yeah, that's the procedures. So here are the things that you'll need to go over today. So first off is approving the minutes from last time. And then these three things are what your new business is.
Okay. Jay's doing that first one.
You want an agenda, Mr. Chairman? A written one?
He just handed me one, Kevin did. We'll share that. You want to take a picture of it? then?
I had it in my phone, but I'll just take a picture. It doesn't really matter. You're running the show.
No, we should be, does anyone have an agenda? Do y'all have agendas with you?
You have an agenda? Yes, sir. Okay, I didn't see that. You ready?
I'm ready if you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you expecting Vicky or? Ready?
Yeah.
Give the call to order for the meeting of the, this is the Building Flood Board of Adjustments and Appeals. Dates March 4th, 2025. And what we, first item on the agenda is approval of the meeting of the previous meeting minutes, February 7th, 2021. I was here.
I was here.
Yeah, you don't need to have been here to either move, to second, or
Yeah.
to vote on the approval of the minutes. You just need to recognize that they are the actual minutes. Those will be fine. We have some new members, so we will need a motion and a second to approve those minutes.
Okay, here comes Vicky. She's got the stuff.
I'm sorry.
So we'll take a temporary pause.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, how are you?
Why not? Thanks.
So we'll mark those as approved. So we don't need to vote on
Did you have a
that?
motion and a second and a vote? I didn't hear it.
No, I thought you said we didn't need to.
You do need
We do,
one.
okay, we need a
Yes.
motion to approve the minutes
I'll motion.
in a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So disposed of that. Do we have any citizens to be heard regarding the items not on the agenda? So seeing none, we'll move on to the new business. And the first order of business is review of the Sunshine Law and the Building Flood Board of Adjustments and Appeals Board Rules by Jay.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to all of you for being here. I owe you 4 Merry Christmases, Happy Thanksgivings, a couple of Happy New Years, and a partridge in a pear tree. We haven't been here in a while, so it is appropriate at this time to very briefly, and I will be brief, to cover partway by refresher and partway by new information for those of you who are new to the board, the fact that you are now, as a result of your membership on this board, subject to 3 chapters of the Florida statutes that you were not subject to before you had the privilege of signing up for and serving on this board. And because those statutory constructions come with penalties for you, both civil and criminal, it is important that you be very acutely aware of their existence. I am always available to you if you have questions about their application. You all have my number. Please feel free to use it as appropriate. For the purposes of this instruction, again, I'll be brief. I'm going to start with Chapter 119. Chapter 119 of the Florida statutes is the Florida Public Records Law, which, as a result of your membership on this board, you are now subject to. So the documents that you come into possession of as a result of your membership on the board are considered public records under Chapter 119. That has a broad and expansive definition, but functionally what it means is anything that memorializes knowledge, formalizes knowledge of this board is going to be considered a public record. What you really don't want to do as a member of the board is become the sole custodian of public records. So if you're emailing back and forth with city staff, those emails are going to reside on city servers, and so you are not their custodian. But if you're emailing, communicating, text messages, some other way with somebody else, some other member of the public, and the city does not have access to that communication, then you are its custodian and you have a custodial requirement to keep and preserve that public record. Okay, I suggest that if that is the case, you take those records, you turn them over to the city clerk's office and say, they were once mine, but now they are yours. You are its custodian now, and then you are done. The public records law is expansive. There are a number of exemptions and exceptions to what is disclosable as a public record upon request. But Florida has very much the most open public records laws in the country. So you should presume that everything that you have is a public record. I suggest to you that you make a folder, either on your computer, a hard copy, a repository of some sort to collect and keep the things related to this board in the event that we receive a public records request for it. If you receive a public records request for it, I've been representing this board for more than a dozen years. It's never happened, to my knowledge. If it does, though, call me, and I'll walk you through it in conjunction with the city attorney's office, okay? The second body of law that you're subject to is Chapter 286 of the Florida statutes, which is usually called the Sunshine Law. And functionally what it means for you folks on this board is that you may not discuss issues that reasonably foreseeably may come before this board outside of a publicly noticed meeting, okay, with other members of your board. So you all can see each other at the grocery store, at church, at the Tampa Bay Rays games, any of those things, and you can discuss anything under the sun except for the things that might come before you for discussion and decision by this board. It is a very easy law to comply with. It can be, if you are careless, a very easy law to break. If you have questions about its application, again, I encourage you to please call me and I will walk you through it. But functionally, in a nutshell, it's very quick. We do 4-hour trainings on this 3 or 4 times a year. That's what it means for you. The public has a right to see and hear your deliberations and your consideration of the applications that come before the board. And so you may not make those decisions behind closed doors or in some other forum that is not open to the public, okay? The final one is Chapter 112, Part 3 of the Florida statutes, which is the Florida Ethics for Public Employees and Public Servant Law. What it means for you folks, and basically it's an ethics code. It's a codified set of ethics rules that set forth a number of restrictions on your service on the board. But in sum, what it means is that your public office, the office that you hold, is a public trust. And you hold that office in service, not of yourself, not of your wife or your kids or your friends or your family, but you hold it in service, in trust for the people of Florida and for the, more particularly the residents of the city of Clearwater, residents and businesses of the city of Clearwater. So sometimes what can happen is you can have what's called a conflict of interest. A conflict of interest arises when your concern for a private interest conflicts with your public interest, okay? So if you have an application come before you that is going to benefit you monetarily or harm you monetarily, you likely have a conflict of interest, which means that you cannot vote on it. Unless you have a conflict of interest, you are required to vote on anything that comes before you. Also, unless you have a bias against one of the people or the parties who come before you. Again, we can walk through those. By way of example, I've had folks call me and say, hey, this person's coming before the board next month, but I was involved in a lawsuit with them 12 years ago. Well, lawsuits come in all shapes and sizes. It could have just been a business dispute that was resolved very amicably, and you may not have a bias or a prejudice towards that person. It may have been something more personal that has harbored animus over the years, okay? Those things need to be taken on a case-by-case basis. Likewise, with voting conflicts under Chapter 112, 31, 34. If you see an application come before you in your service on the board that says, I work with that company, that's my company, that's the applicant. This happens from time to time on our community development board. I'm the engineer of record, the realtor for the project. Whatever the case may be, I may benefit, my company may benefit, my family may benefit or be harmed depending upon the board's action on that item. Let's talk about that. Let's not talk about it on the dais, because some of those factual scenarios are a little hard to work through in a sort of a free-flowing meeting like this. I prefer that you call me directly before the meeting so that I can fully understand the facts of your situation, so that I can advise you as to whether you in fact have a conflict of interest or you don't. But in terms of Chapter 112, what I can tell you is please execute your service on behalf of the residents and citizens and businesses of the people of Clearwater. And if you do that, you won't have any problem legally serving on the board. Do y'all have any questions for me? I don't want to intrude on the regular business of the board, but I'm always available to answer these questions for you as to these three bodies of law and how they operate on your service, okay?
Very good. Thank you.
Yes, thank
Do
you.
you want to mention the financial disclosure also?
If you have a conflict, you mean a Form 1? I don't get involved in your Form 1s. You should be hearing from the city clerk, if you haven't already, about filing an annual financial disclosure on a Form 1. Have you all done that already?
Yeah.
So I'm happy to answer your questions about it. It's typically handled by the clerk's office, but I'm always here for your inquiries on those. There was a period of time, a year or two ago, I don't recall when it was, that the Florida legislature was going to require an enhanced level of financial disclosure called a Form 6 that is presently being litigated in the courts. It's been stayed while that litigation unfolds in the state court system. I don't think, my memory is that it wouldn't affect this board anyway. I believe it's for elected members of boards and commissions, but it's out there, so be aware of it. All right? Anybody else? Anybody
You haven't filled out a
miss
Form
anything?
1. It's a basic form.
Yeah.
Otherwise, thank you for your service on the board. It is appreciated.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Ready to move on?
Please.
Thank
Do we need to elect new officers?
You need to elect new officers. This is required to be done at our meetings in April, but I don't believe we're going to meet in April. We may not meet again until 2029. So let's go ahead and do it now. The way that this process would work is that we'd first take the chairmanship, rather, and we would accept nominations from you guys. You can nominate yourself. A nomination doesn't need to be seconded. When the nominations are over, meaning there are no more nominations to be made, we'll take the first of the nominations and we can take a motion in a second. Being very candid with you, you have a board here that hadn't met a lot, and it's kind of new. I would suggest that you stick with the present chairman and vice chairman, in Mr. Cooper and Ms. Helmus, just because it can be a little tricky at times. And I didn't just volunteer you, Mr. Cooper, but I hope.
A lot of people do.
And then you'll do the same process for the vice chairmanship. Okay, so I would suggest that you take the chairmanship first. Let's take nominations. I nominate Mr. Cooper, so to speak. That's me. I have no power here, but that's what I would do.
Any nominations?
I would nominate My good friend, Mr. Cooper here.
Other nominations? May we have a motion to appoint Mr. Cooper as chair?
Nominate,
So
You
moved.
move.
move to nominate.
All right, we have a motion to appoint Mr. Cooper as chair. Do we have a second to that motion?
Second.
All in favor?
I,
Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. All right. The vice chairperson, let's take nominations. Anybody?
I nominate Catherine.
Are there additional nominations? All right, let's hear a motion.
motion to nominate Catherine, vice
Motion
chair.
to appoint Catherine as vice chair, is that correct? Do we have a
Correct.
second?
Second.
All those in favor?
I,
Anyone opposed? Seeing none, it passes 4-0. Thank you, folks.
Okay, thank you.
All right,
Absolutely.
you're on.
Moving right along, this will be third item now we're up to. Approve the request for a variance as part of the beach marina replacement project for construction and installation of floating docks complete with marina utilities, a fueling system, and walled attendant structure. These would replace the existing fixed timber docks and related utilities and structures. And we should have a presentation by the city staff, since there's no applicant. Well, I guess the city staff and the applicant are the same person.
Well, yes and no. It's all the city of Clearwater, but yeah, the engineering department and the marine department are the applicants
Mhm.
on this. And it is due to the fact that they are redoing the entire marina down there, docks, everything. And this is, and you'll see through their presentation that this is a request to have new floating docks with fuel service out on the dock itself, so the vessels out there can refuel. Why we're bringing it to you, why they are bringing it to you, is because the construction is seaward of the mean high water line, which violates the building code requirements and our flood ordinance. And so we work carefully with the FEMA folks, the DEP folks, folks from the state. We have our floodplain administrator there at the front table, Gene Henry, and he has spent a lot of time to research on how best for our marina to do this. And through a variance, meeting a long list of criteria that is outlined in a letter from the Division of Emergency Management that's in your packet, is what they propose to present to you all today to see if all of that has been met and a variance would be appropriate.
Kevin, can you point us to that document?
It's right
Yeah,
there.
it should be, look like
Oh, it's
this.
in there.
Division of Emergency Management on the top, and it's to Lauren Matzke,
Next
who is our interim director.
yeah.
And Gene, if there's anything that you want to enhance what I briefly summarized, please do.
All right, before we get too far down the line here, Mr. Chair, I'm going to interrupt so to make sure we appreciate the introduction to the application, but before we start taking testimony from folks, I want to ask anyone who's going to speak today to be sworn in, if you wouldn't mind. I'm asking you to raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you'll give in this hearing is the entire truth?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, I appreciate that.
Well, good afternoon. I'm Gene Henry, floodplain administrator.
Gene, get by the mic.
Oh, yeah, no, I always forget that. Floodplain administrator. Let me just pop this down here. So this went through plan review, and it was reviewed and such. It is a request to deviate from the minimum standards under our code, as well as Florida Building Code and 44 CFR 60.3. And but there is a request, and we did coordinate with the state's office because of the sensitivity of this with our compliance under, our flood prevention ordinance, as well as just the National Flood Insurance Program in general. So when it's against the minimum standards, we come before you. You do have in Chapter 51 a series of items that you need to look at as well, and we're here all, to help you go through that if you need additional information, but I'm going to do a summary level at this point in order to allow for the presentation to continue. But it is it's a request for the minimum needed to go past the line as Kevin was identifying. And that is to, and again, I'm going to stress the minimum needed for the facility to operate and work for the city of Clearwater and the residents and the tenants that will be there helping our customers. So I was just going to go over a couple of extra items just quickly. So there is a staff report, so I'm going to bring that to your attention because the applicants are going to go over, our other department's going to go over their report and request. But as you see, there's a background of analysis, and it goes over the items that are brought to the attention and that we reviewed and coordinated with the state of Florida as well as FEMA. Chapter 51, sections 51.601 through 51.608 provides the opportunity to request a variance where the following are required: limitations on authority, considerations, certain conditions, and, of course, maintaining the documentation. On the next page, it talks about the proposed buildings are seaward of the reach of the mean high tide, which is contrary to the Chapter 51, Section 51.401, Paragraph 4. And it also speaks of the Florida Building Code and ASCE, which is adopted as a reference within the building code itself. And the third bullet down, it brings out the discussions that we had with the Florida Division of Emergency Management. That is to ensure our compliance and move forward. They did recommend, or not even recommend, they did say if the city wants to continue forward, that this would be the best consideration to move forward with, and requesting, if we were going to request a variance, this would be the way to go. The fourth bullet down is the State Floodplain Manager's Office. Again, that's at the state level. They initially said the request did not meet the requirements under those codes. And this, again, this would be a way to move forward if the city wanted to pursue such. And then conclusions of law are the next items down. And then I just wanted to put your eyes on the recommendation to the board. The process and approved will sustain the city's participation with this level of participation with the National Flood Insurance Program. The request and the design of the construction is following input from the Florida State Floodplain Manager's Office of Floodplain Management and the Federal Emergency Management Office, and therefore staff supports the request. And this would be, if the variance is, if you do approve the variance request, this would be only for this particular request and wouldn't be, it wouldn't go towards any other request. All right, that's, unless you have any other questions, I'm here, and I can follow up with anything afterwards as well. Thank you.
Where is the writing of that? Is it in this emergency management document, or the city's opinion to go forward?
Yes, it's in the in that state letter.
Staff report?
Yes, on the third,
Okay.
not the staff report, the one that has the department or Division of Emergency Management. Yes, so if you go down to the third paragraph,
Third.
and it speaks to, provides applicants the opportunity to request, they identify and extract the parts of the federal Florida Building Code that allows for a variance to be requested, and in the floodplain management regulations. And then the second sentence says, if the city considers a variance request, it must do so with particular attention to limitations on authority, and that's our code, section 51.603, considerations, section 51.607, and conditions, section 51.608. Those are mirrored in the states, or in the 44 CFR as well. The city must, the third paragraph, the city must maintain documentation related to its appeals and variances. We will have to let them know, if you do approve this, that we have done so, and including justification for the issuance or denial, and that's 51.209. Again, we will have to give soon, whatever the decision is, we will move that forward. Of a particular note, any variance must be the minimum necessary considering the flood hazard to afford relief, and that's 51.608, paragraph 2, paragraph C. And then the next paragraph talks about the rest of it.
So, Gina, can you clarify, that letter that you put in, though, referred to not just the floating fuel dock, it also referenced kiosks too?
So, yeah, so the first paragraph is there, and then, that's correct, thank you. So on the very back page is about the kiosk as well. Today's not regarding the kiosk. Today's about the floating docks.
So today's subject is just the floating dock?
Yes.
Not all the
The kiosk and such along.
kiosk and
yes.
fuel transfer and all that?
Well, it is with the floating docks will maintain the services to the boaters, which includes the fuel.
Mhm.
And I believe they have in here a request for at least a walled building for the attendant to be out of the elements and such.
Chair, may I ask a question?
Yes.
Mr. Henry, in the recommendation, it does read, "This process and approval will sustain the city's participation with this level of participation with the National Flood Insurance Program." So I'm interpreting that if this is approved and moved forward, that the city will not lose any CRS points for this?
Correct.
That's correct.
As we understand it, yes. And again, that's why I stressed it's for this situation only. And the minimum need, and that's why the state also stressed the minimum needed to move forward and for the variance to be for the mean high tide.
Thank you. I just want to confirm that no CRS points would be
Yes,
lost.
yeah, very important, thank you.
And if I can just add on that too, that is the main thing that we wanted to preserve is the CRS rating. The city of Clearwater saves millions of dollars, the residents of the city of Clearwater, every year on flood insurance.
Yeah.
Right now, the discount level is at 25%.
We're right
Yeah.
around 5. Very
So
good.
it truly is worth millions of dollars throughout the community. So that was important to us to do it in a way, do whatever we do in a way that would not lose any points on the rating system.
Thank you very much.
I have one more question, if I could ask. Is there any, what do they refer to as 404 qualifications or Corps of Engineers or the Department of Environmental? The Florida Department of Environmental, whatever the last name of it is.
I mean, for the 404 permitting?
Yeah.
And such? Well, I'm going to leave that to the engineer that
Okay.
the city has.
Yeah, to answer that question, we did receive the Army Corps permit recently for the project, and that includes a 404 review. So
Mhm.
they have gone through that and reviewed the full project, including the floating
Can you
fuel
use the
system.
mic?
All right.
Oh,
I'm
sorry.
asking you all come to the mic, also introduce yourself with your name so everyone knows.
Yes,
And we can make a
Nicole
record
Shaw
and the
with
board members know.
So I'll be speaking shortly, but answer your question.
Do you have any questions? Any questions?
Any negatives to this? That would be the only thing that I would.
Any more questions?
Are they continuing a more lengthy, I'm going to go ahead of them.
Mhm. Continue with the presentation.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to ask you to take a short break.
I can't tell any jokes right now. I'm not funny.
All right, so I've just been discussing with the city attorney's office, or rather the city planning staff, as to the order that we're going in, because there's some, at least in my feeble mind, some distinction is between the applicant and the city staff. So we have an applicant here to make a presentation, and it might assist your understanding of the application to hear that presentation first, and then move on to the city staff's observations and recommendations. So if we can do that?
Yeah.
So is that what you're planning on doing now?
Yes, sir.
All right, so some of the stuff you've heard, it might be technically out of order,
Yeah.
but it all goes together.
Good afternoon, Board. I'm Mike McDonald, and I'm the Marine and Aviation Director for the City of Clearwater. I have been with the department, and I've been operating the marina the better part of the last decade. The marina was built in the 1940s and was expanded until 1965, as it essentially looked until the start of the reconstruction project late last year. The marina was in serious disrepair and needed to be rebuilt. Over the last 5 years, the fueling facility at the marina pumps between 800 and 900,000 gallons of fuel annually to the commercial fleet, as well as Pinellas County residents and visitors passing through the area from all over North and South America. The fueling facility also has a capacity to pump out wastewater from vessels' holding tanks. The facility pumps out between 100 and 150 gallons of wastewater per day. The facility was also designed to store a fuel spill emergency kit and can be deployed moments after any type of spill. The facility also distributes motor oil and other lubricants. The fueling facility was designed with emergency fuel shutoffs, and all fueling and wastewater are meticulously monitored by a certified underground storage tank operator within the facility in accordance with state of Florida regulations. Fueling facility operators are required to monitor every fueling event. The fuel facility is strategically located on the southeast side of the marina for the safety of the surrounding businesses and tourist locations that would minimize any type of emergency. The facility is located down current from the rest of the marina, as well as the marina neighbors, in the event of a fuel spill, fire, or wastewater spill. The fueling facility is also designed with many redundant features, including a leak detection system which automatically shuts off fuel valves, as well as manual push valves. The fueling operators inspect the fuel pumps, sump pumps, and fueling components daily. I am here today with others that will go into a deeper dive into the importance of this facility and how this facility will satisfy the flood requirements to continue its current operational readiness and provide products to our guests safely and effectively. At this time, I'd like to introduce Marcus Williamson, our Public Works Director. Thank you.
Good afternoon, board members. Appreciate your time hearing us today. So both the engineering side and the environmental, who oversees the CRS, report up through the public works. So we definitely have a lot of appreciation for all the complexities involved in this situation. So a little bit about my background. So before joining the city about 1.5 years ago, I'd spent 28 years in the military, primarily as a civil engineer for the Navy. And as we went through our career, we learned you run into these scenarios. So a code may not consider a particular application. You may get conflicting codes that are out there where one's telling you can do something, another can't. We were trained as we went through, you start to look at what was the intent of the code. So is the scenario you're looking at well addressed within the code? What was the intent in it? As you progress through your career, you're moving up in the ranks, you start getting involved more with, okay, now you have to help write codes, regulations, policies, and you get a deeper appreciation for how do you balance that concise nature of your writing of the codes and regulations with trying to capture everything that's out there. And they really do try to help train you, okay, look at what are you giving clear intent and guidance that's out there. So I would offer it as the engineer of record gets up here. I think they've done a really good job, and we've talked through and we've hashed out a lot of, we've got multiple codes out here. Do they truly consider this exact type of scenario that we're putting in it? And you know, it's a floating dock system that's going to be out there. So are we trying to apply land-based criteria to a floating dock? So Nicole, our engineer of record, will talk a little bit more into it, but I would just offer, I think what we've discovered is one of those situations where it's not clearly spelled out in all of the codes. So we're having to do some interpretation. We're bringing forward what we believe complies, meets the intent of what's out there, and is actually giving the residents the proper operational need that they've got. So I'll turn that over to Nicole.
So I'm Nicole Shaw. I'm with Moffitt and Nickel, the design leads and engineer of record for the marina replacement project. Okay, good, it works. So, the project scope, as they've described, is to replace the existing marina. It's a 165-slip marina. It's a fixed dock system. It flooded during Hurricane Helene. We are looking to replace this system, maintaining the same slip count, but modernizing the system some, maintaining the same use and the same balance of end users. As part of that, we would like to replace the existing fixed overwater fuel office with a new floating fuel office. And the official request is listed here. Have you guys read the request specifically? Okay, then I won't go through that. So the little orange block on the screen here under these two figures, the left one, that shows the proposed location of the floating fuel building. The FEMA firm to the left shows that the area is in a V zone with a base flood elevation of 11 NAVD. And the right diagram shows the Pinellas County Vulnerability Assessment from 2021, and the site-specific base flood elevation for the building is in plus 12.8, but we've actually gone for the most conservative value for the whole property, which is on the far west side with the storms coming in from the water, and so that's plus 13.6. And so we are using for the city's criteria, a base flood elevation of 13.6 for the site, and the design flood elevation is 2 feet above that for a DFE of plus 15.6 for all elements of the project. The existing structures that we're proposing to demolish and replace are shown in red at the right side of the page. That is the existing fixed fuel dock with the fuel system and the building shown in blue. One other thing I wanted to note is that during part of this project, we're not just looking to demolish and replace that, but we're actually removing 7 other fixed building type structures over water that are not being replaced as the system, one of them being an overwater office. So we are reducing the total number of overwater structures. This just shows some images of the existing building and the uses of the fuel office, mechanical room, and restroom, which currently exist. The proposed floating fuel building is located a little bit further south as we modernize the marina. It wasn't possible to keep it in its exact location, so it's a little further south, but you can see in red that's the new configuration of the floating fuel dock with the same quantity of dispensers as there currently are, same general use of everything, and the proposed building, same general use of existing. This shows a floor plan of it where we've minimized the space for each of the elements and a couple of renderings showing the overall building intent. Now, if you're not familiar with floating systems in general, the building is anchored to a float system as a platform float for a floating dock, and that is restrained by guide piles that allow it to move up and down with the tides. So this figure here shows on the left side, this is at a mean tide level at 0 foot NAVD. And then on the right side, this is what the system looks like when you're at the design flood elevation of plus 15.6. So we have designed the guide piles here, they're steel pipe piles, to be up to plus 17 to have a little bit of additional freeboard. So should that dock go up to the design flood elevation, it will not float off the top. That keeps it restrained and anchored, and those piles are driven deep into the ground, into the limestone. The dock system itself has a 2-foot freeboard, and the building is located, the finished floor elevation is another 3/4 of an inch above that. So the finished floor elevation during the design flood level is 2 foot, 3/4 of an inch above the DFE. Any questions on that so far? Okay. So the proposed floating building is comparable in size and scale to the existing, and there's no changes from the proposed use. For the project, there's an overall reduction in overwater buildings. We're removing approximately 2,680 square feet of overwater buildings. It's 7 total structures, and we're putting back 1 at 790 square feet. We chose, design team in the city chose to move from a fixed to a floating system here to improve resiliency because floating structures rise and fall with the waters and are inherently flood-proofed. They're also adaptable to sea level rise, and they're an ideal situation for areas that are subject to storm surge. In addition to the Army Corps permit we've received, which included the floating building on it, we've also received the Pinellas County Water Navigation permit. As part of that, we had to request an administrative variance for the floating building to have an overwater structure, and this is the permit number listed there for reference. The federal codes, the NFPA and the International Fire Code, require an attendant to be present on when there is marine fueling. The 2024 Florida Fire Prevention Code specifically references NFPA 30A, and that's shown at the bottom left of the screen, where the attendant needs to be within 15 feet of the dispensing controls and a direct visual sight of the dispensing operations and the emergency shutoff. This is a very high-capacity fuel dock. It's very popular. It serves both the commercial fleet and the public, regional public. And so really an attendant needs to be out there full-time given the high usage of the dock system. And given the hot Florida climate, we feel that proper shelter from the extreme Florida climate is essential. The building itself has been designed in accordance with ASCE 716 for a basic wind speed of 145 miles per hour in accordance with the Florida Building Code. The dock and building system have been designed for both operational and extreme wave loads that are calculated from site-specific numerical modeling with a significant wave height of 3.9 feet. Focusing on the building itself, it's designed in general accordance with ASCE 24 and the Florida Building Code as a flood design class 2 structure. The building is anchored to resist flotation, collapse, and lateral movement due to the effect of wind and flood loads acting simultaneously on all building components and other load requirements. So as I mentioned, the building is anchored to the dock, which is restrained by the steel guide piles that are driven into the ground. They're high enough up at plus 17 to keep the dock system restrained by the piles at all design water levels. For the lowest supporting horizontal member of a floating dock, that is the floating dock itself, which remains above water at all times. And the floating dock has a freeboard of 2 feet and a finished floor elevation of 3/4, so it is more than 2 feet above the water level at all design water level cases, including at the DFE. For utilities, the attendant utilities route within the floating system and above water, and the building has been designed with flood damage resistant materials in accordance with ASCE 24 and FEMA. Some of the materials for the damage resistance, we're using aluminum framing, stainless steel fasteners, pressure treated plywood, sealed concrete floors. Everything is intended to be able to get wet out there. And the attendant utilities, as I mentioned, with the floating dock, they always float above the DFE, and there's a figure at the bottom left there that shows an example of what this looks like with the utility chase and the utility sleeves located at the top of the dock system, at least a foot above water. When it comes to how the utilities route from the land side to the water side, there's an articulating aluminum gangway that allows with flexible connections for the utilities at the shore side and at the dock side. And there's slack in those systems that allow you for the full range of water levels. And the shutoffs are located upland at the upland utility connections.
I have a question on that.
Perfect, I'm done,
apparatus.
so.
Like in this past fall, summer storms, how does that device where the fuel lines are in the ramp, how high can it articulate up versus the land-based part of it?
You mean if the water side goes higher than the, yeah. So if you're in unfortunate situation where your shore is lower and your walls have not been raised, then yes, you have a situation where that inverts under regular conditions. So there's no operational challenge for that, except that the gangway has a toe plate that starts to invert and look like this. If you're in a storm event and that occurs, then there's multiple sets of wheels under the gangway. So the gangway would be technically hanging on the, right? If you're coming up like this, you would have a situation where you would not be able to access the gangway down to the dock if you were in a significant storm surge. But we have raised the walls and the bulkheads surrounding this site to plus 5.2. It would take a pretty significant storm event to significantly invert the gangway. But the utilities they flex both directions, so there is slack in the system to go all the way to the plus 15.
So the fuel that's in that system, that's going out to the boats, where does it go? if that gets
Yes,
torn
so
off?
the fuel comes through the bulkhead and it routes with slack at the top and bottom of that system, then it goes into the dock. The two yellow sleeves on the right represent the fuel in this case because it runs in sleeves, not in open chase like some of the other types of utilities.
Chair, I have a question if I may for the
Sure.
record. So the dock that's being put in is replacing the existing dock that was damaged by a previous storm event. That previous storm event, what was that identified as? Was that a 500-year storm event, or what was it classified as?
So it was
that
not
damaged it?
specifically damaged in a storm. It's well past its service life. So we've actually been planning for this replacement for 3 years now with the city, but environmental permitting takes a long time. So what I was mentioning was Hurricane Helene, the water levels got up to about +7 in that case, and the existing building flooded because.
What was
in
the
docks-
elevation that rose to?
It was around +7, I believe. Don't quote me on specifically, but that's the ballpark.
Gene Henry, the still water elevation was 7 feet.
Okay, yeah.
So I have a question. The materials that you're using, what's the lifespan of the corrosion and the rust? And, I mean, I live on the beach and stainless steel, I'm replacing hinges every year.
High-quality stainless steel does have a service life of 30-plus years, but that is typically on the waterfront. Your design lifespans from 30 to 50 years, depending on the structures and the component. Floating docks, in this case, concrete floating docks typically have a service life of about 30 years. With proper maintenance, they should last that.
And that would go into a maintenance program, so we obviously would have to inspect that. So once it's built and they're gone, ourselves in Marine and Aviation, we would be doing regular inspections. And there's a number of pre-storm functions and activities they would take on also before any major hurricanes or storm surges. Like Nicole had said, there's automatic shut-off valves and breakaway valves that are designed into this.
Yeah, and the fuel system's shut off every night. Unless there's an attendant there, then the fueling system itself is shut down.
And the electrical system is shut down for the storm events as well. So at the main breakers on the upland, you shut off everything before the storm event.
In the event of another hurricane, is there a purge system that backflows the fuel back into the tank from this run out from the tank to the fueling station?
No, there's not any kind of system that draws the fuel back into the tank.
So the fuel stays in the slack?
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
And just to confirm, the Pinellas County 500-year storm event, is that 17 elevation for that location?
Sorry.
The 500-year storm event from Pinellas County, is that 17 at that location?
So the Pinellas County elevation was plus 13.6 for the BFE, but we added 2 feet for city's DFE because that's their criteria. So it was 15.6 total. The top of pile was 17 for additional freeboard.
So if by chance it were to go beyond that 17, I mean, obviously it'd be a serious event, but if that happened, it would just, there's no top containment of that, it would just come up and.
It would theoretically
Go
come
on.
off the top, yeah.
Okay.
Trying to,
At that point, we would probably lose a lot of the beach.
Yeah, sure.
Be a new pass there.
Yeah,
And I
so-
know normally when the DFEs are intended to bring a structure up, especially in a V zone, you want to be above the first horizontal member, the structure wants to be above that elevation. This is floating on that elevation with the wind, with the wave impact, right? So has there been additional consideration from the wave action structural impact? Because now you're synonymous with the wave action. You're not getting above the wave action where normally you try to put that DFE.
Yes, so it has been designed, we did site-specific numerical modeling for the project, our coastal team
To
did.
take the
and
additional-
looked at this as
Okay.
so this marina is fairly protected from a wave standpoint because the waves have to come over the beach to really develop into the water level and the size of what's occurring.
Okay.
We looked at it also from the interior side, and the controlling wave is actually coming from the interior side, and that's where we got the 3.9.
Okay.
Go ahead and continue.
No, that's it.
Okay.
I added those last two slides to show, this is really the summary slide here, and I added the last two just to give a little bit more detail if you wanted it. Wasn't sure if you were gonna get this before the presentation or not, so I tried to add some extra detail.
That's good.
I was trying to look online at what happened to these in the recent hurricanes. There's a couple of them that is up and down the coast, and I couldn't see where any of them had any damage, at least they're not reported that's, I could see on the internet. Have you
Floating
done research
structures
into
and-
that?
Oh, I was gonna say, floating structures in reasonably protected locations have been performing very well in storms. If you have high exposure, or really long fetches, like your harbor marina, which has much longer direct fetches to it, they're seeing more damage. But Naples and Marathon both have floating facilities that weathered multiple hurricanes in the last few years and are doing really well. One of them's a V zone, one of them's an A zone, but they're both similar exposure.
And these fuel systems are really redundant. I lost my fuel system with this past one on the fixed dock, but we lost 0 fuel, so. But the pumps were all underwater, we lost the Vita route, lost the operating system.
And no SSOs from the wastewater containment either? or-
Mm-mm. Nope.
So, and the gap in the code, I guess to clarify, is that, ASCE 24 does not address floating structures. FEMA does not directly address floating structures. It's intended to be fixed structures. I even talked to the committee working on the new ASCE 24, and their response was, oh, yeah, we should address that in the next version. But it's getting implemented right now, so we can't at the moment. But, floating structures and floating buildings are increasing in popularity around the world right now, and it's a way to address, buildings in the coastal high hazard area by keeping them above the base flood elevation when the base flood elevation occurs.
Any further questions?
No, sir.
No.
Okay, is there a presentation by the city?
Get out of this.
Not anything further than what we had already introduced to you. This design that they have come up with seems to meet all the intent of the code. If it were a structure on land in a V zone, it would be stationary and it would be fixed at 2 feet above the base, or the design flood elevation. It would be to the bottom of the structural supports. This will enable that to happen with a floating dock. This is by far better than what's there now, which is, what'd they say, 40 years old or so? And so
Is it
I
still
think
there?
it's still there, yeah. And so, Gene, did you have anything further you want to add?
No, Gene Henry, floodplain administrator. Just that we're supposed to tell you, and per the code, no flood insurance would be available for this structure over the water, and possibly not disaster assistance as well. But yeah, just like Kevin had mentioned, and that really concludes staff's presentation, which includes what we said earlier too.
So the current dock has insurance?
It wouldn't be covered either.
Is the city
I was
currently
gonna say that-
self-insured?
that
Yeah, it's
What's there now is not insured as well,
just under the city, yeah.
just under the city.
Okay. Jay, so being no cross exam,
I don't know. I doubt that the city wants to cross-examine itself, but they're welcome to if they'd like.
so we move on to comments from the public. There's no public here? Is that correct?
I don't see anybody.
Any closing remarks by the applicant?
Any closing remarks by anybody?
Yeah.
I just reiterate again, I mean, there's a lot of effort that went into this overall. So it was not decisions that were taken lightly. We worked back and forth a lot within the internal city staff, within the engineer of record, really digging into the codes, trying to understand what's the intent. You know, and as Nicole highlighted, some of it's just they can't think of everything. They're writing concise codes. So we really do feel like we're bringing forward the best possible solution given all the factors.
I have one more question just for the group there. I'm on 3 bridge projects right now, and the common situation is trying to find the authority who has the final jurisdiction, who signs off on this. Do you know who the final jurisdiction is
For
for a permit?
Well, so we've got multiple.
Yeah, there's multiple.
Yeah. So.
But
we
usually
just
there's
had to
one
work-
person, there's one,
Yeah.
one organization or department that has the final say, and that's
The
the,
city building department
Yeah.
would technically, but it's the Army Corps. We have the Army Corps permit from the federal
Mhm.
side, we have the DEP permit from the state side, and the Pinellas County permit from the local side. So they go all together. There's no one jurisdiction that oversees it, but we have authorizations for all 3. The final thing we need is a building department.
The building
Have
official
you-
has no objections?
No, the building official
Just-
has no.
have you run this by the Coast Guard?
Again, Gene Henry, just to add to that, under the flood damage prevention ordinance, if none of the other permits are in place, then we can't continue with the, approval of the flood damage prevention code. So that would be your overall statement if nothing, if other items are left undone.
Have you
We have not
contacted the Coast?
conferred with the Coast Guard. It's, since the system's all connected, it wouldn't be considered a vessel. We did actually explore that as an option, but it would have to be, the system would have to be disconnected from the docks, which is not, is structurally sound. And we didn't have aids to navigation or anything that would have required an Army Corps permit, or the
Coast Guard permit. Because I know in many cases, nobody wants to take the final say
Or responsibility.
or responsibility.
I think that's why we're
And
here.
it gets pushed off.
Right, and I think that's part of it, you know, everyone's got their section of the
Mhm.
codes and addressing individual. So, you know, as Nicole said, there's quite a few codes that they're referencing.
Yeah. It gets to be, I'll sign it if they sign it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we're down to the last step.
You hope.
Hopefully, so.
Okay.
Got it.
Any closing comments, Kevin? None?
No, no,
Okay.
thanks.
So we close the public hearing?
Yep.
So the public hearing is hereby closed, and then we'll have a discussion and vote by the board.
Let me suggest to the board briefly that you have a series of motions in your binders to approve with conditions, deny certain types of applications. Those are examples, and they come with code sections here, typically 47.035.2, et cetera. But here, and I'm sure that city staff or the applicant will correct me if I'm wrong, I believe you want to motion, if this is your finding, that the criteria set forth in code 51.606 and 51.608 are satisfied, if that is your finding. We agree?
See you standing in this one. Here it is, very first page. First tab. Does anyone on the board have any conditions that they'd like to add to this?
No conditions,
No.
no objections.
No.
So we'll take a vote? All those in,
What, need a motion first?
Yeah.
So let's have someone motion.
that'd be the first motion here.
Yeah, motion to grant request, move to find the action on the request to be within the board's authority and to grant the request based on the evidence, testimony presented in the application, staff report at today's hearing, and after due consideration of the criteria set forth in Code of Ordinances, Section 51.11.
I'm going to ask you to amend the motion to include sections 51.606 and 51.608.
Agreed.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second. Go ahead.
All right. You are teed up, Mr. Chairman. You have a motion and a second. You can take discussion or a vote as you see appropriate.
Any more discussion?
Good.
Move the item to vote. All those in favor of the motion as presented and amended, please say aye.
Aye.
So that's 4 favor,
Okay.
none against. Moving on to the next item, is there any old business?
None here.
None here?
I think Member Helmus is probably the only one with who might have old business, but I don't see that happening.
Director's report, I don't believe there's the director's report, is
I
there?
don't know if anyone from city staff wishes to make a report. That's where we would ordinarily do that.
No, usually in past, what we've done is just kind of give you what's going on in our office. So just FYI, we've issued about 16, or taken in about 1,600 permit applications for damage repair. Many of those already issued, many of them already done. We've got a handful of things that, properties that are substantially damaged that are doing either demolition or replacement of some kind. So we've been very busy with that. That along with our normal load of permits, that has not stopped, that has continued on. So we've had a lot of plans going over our desks lately. And we are looking at the possibility of maybe another board meeting, this board meeting, maybe next month or the month after. So just kind of put that in the back of your calendars to, and we'll keep you posted on that.
Okay,
All right, thank you.
Very good.
so we need a motion to adjourn, Jay? We'll
You can close the
we'll
meeting.
declare the meeting closed and adjourned.